Hello and welcome. We're at Holistic Investments, and I'm your host, Konstantin Kogan. And I'm delighted to have an amazing guest, my first female guest, Alexandra Sasha Johnson. She's a managing director at Heat Capital, founder at GTS, and we're going to talk today about her new project, which is a VC.House. Hi, Alexandra.
Hello, Konstantin.
So before we begin, and this is going to be a really exciting interview, because again, it's the first female VC founder and my show, and I'm really excited. And traditionally, we have to read the disclaimer. So this content is for informational purposes only, and you should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. So now we can begin. And the reason why I'm so excited because, by the way, can I call you Sasha or Alexandra, which is better?
No, by now you can call me Sasha so that I feel that you're my friend. When people call me Alexandra, it means they're trying to sell something to me. And I don't think you're going to sell anything, so call me Sasha.
Okay, great. So that's already a privilege. So Sasha is one of the first female VC founders, starting her first fund in 2003, which is impressive. And back in the days, I'm sure it was a completely different atmosphere, like when you were starting a fund as a female founder. So I want to ask you about your personal journey. Tell us about your story. I hope it's going to be unfiltered as much as you can, right? And what was different back in the days, and what progress do you see right now?
It's, well, first of all, I'm thankful that you've invited me. We now had an interview together, but I've heard some of your guests in your previous meetings, and very impressive people, very impressive. So thank you so much. And, what is really fascinating, I was living my life, I'm doing what I wanted to do. And only several years ago, I discovered that I'm a female this, a female that, because it never occurred to me to think of myself as with that kind of a definition before anything else I was doing. And even when I joined the MBA program in Berkeley, and everybody by now knows that I was the first Russian-speaking MBA. And that's something I accepted gladly. Yes, this is good to be the first, but even there, I didn't consider myself a female student. I mean, to me, that whole notion, I understand that it's an important topic and I'm happy to discuss it, but also a full disclaimer, I've been living my life and doing everything I was doing and still am doing as a professional. And to me, either you are a player and you earn your seat at the table, or you don't. And then we can talk about why we didn't get the seat at the table. Like, for example, when I'm fighting for a deal and I didn't get it, I will not turn around and say, oh, you don't invest in women. Oh, you don't want to. No, it means that I have not done something to the point where I am like an equally good player. So in that sense, I'm happy to be a mentor to young women, and I do that regularly. But when it comes to my own story, I think it will be diminishing to say that somebody is a female this, a female that. It means that I work so hard to be an equal player, and now it's so overhyped that if women get somewhere, it means that, that's because they're female. No. I know that my friends were joking all the time. Are you a woman or are you a female? Well, I am a professional, and let's stick with that. Having said that, I'm very happy that I was born a woman, and I will never ignore my female traits, but also when it comes to business, as I said, you're either a straightforward player and you do what you do, or you don't. And the investment world, yes, traditionally it was established, and we can talk about that, mostly by male players. And whenever you break into the industry, which is heavily dominated by one gender or something else, then at some point, I wouldn't say you accept the rules of the game, but you need to understand them. And if you cannot accept them, then go in, start working, and then change something around you so that once you show that you are a player, people will learn that they will need to deal with you. And that is true for any industry. And I'm happy to see that, yes, there are many newcomers to the investment world. Not all of them are qualified, and that's something that I think that will be like, pendulum swinging in the other direction, that now we have a quota in the boxes, and there are many firms that will have to check that box. Like how many, I won't go into other stuff about the color and minorities and all that. We're always sticking to the female. How do you hire that number of female employees or whatever? But for us to have many female investors, well, we started not a long time ago. It means that you cannot just technically say, we're going to fill in and bring that person and replace this wonderful investor only because he's not female. So being a woman, I can say that. I think that if you're a professional and you're a player, yes, go play. If you want to play with big boys, well, be a big girl and play with them equally. That's how I see it.
That's, and I would say a very refreshing view, because, given the fact that right now it's a double-edged sword, like you cannot even talk about it so openly, because all of a sudden now you're misogynist, or you're you're not providing the equal rights if you're an employee, or employer, sorry. And that creates kind of this scope of, if you have enough charisma, enough knowledge, enough, passion in any industry, right? So I feel like in 2020, there are a lot of opportunities. I know that there are grants, there are great, support and communities who support specifically female founders. It doesn't matter whether they're creating their VC fund or a project. But I want to ask you the last provocative question in this context, just to close this topic. So if you were to compare, the paradigm shift, again, from 2003 or early 2000s, right? And the 20 years or 15 years that in your professional career, we see that percentage-wise, female founders and female VCs are, there are more of them. But do you think that the quality of VC general partners and funds, is it somewhere meeting the expectations of the industry, or you're still considering that it's more like politics?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I do want to establish that fact that I want to think that I'm invited into deals or projects by people, not because they need to check that box, they invited a woman. Okay? I do see myself as a player, and people know that I always have an opinion. And I do want to think that I'm invited into projects, and even including your interview, not because you needed a woman, okay? Because that I'm very clear. Having said that, again, if I look back in the beginning of my investment career, it happens I did have mentors, and it just happened so that two of them were women. But I didn't go around just saying that, okay, I want a woman as a mentor, I want a man as a mentor. No, it's just whatever stage in your life, in your professional career you're seeking people who can teach you something you need to know of that particular segment. And the two women who happened to be indirectly, I wouldn't even call them mentors, but they were in the investment business before I showed up. I absolutely learned a lot from them, and they were enormously respected by that white boy club in Silicon Valley. I can name their names. It's Ann Winblood, it's Annette Campbell-White, and then of course there is Pat Clarity. When we started the first fund with DFJ, and we traveled to Russia, and people were telling us, gave us the list of people we absolutely had to meet, and Pat was one of them, because she's the one who was the CEO and founder of Delta Capital back then, and actually people, well, it doesn't matter. So what I'm saying, that in that sense, nothing has changed for me. If you have the expertise and the confidence, and you respect it, it does not matter if you're a man or a woman. So that has not changed. What did change that now many young women see it also as an opportunity which they even didn't consider before. And that is good news, and it is a good change. That many young, talented women who wanted to be in venture capital they even didn't perceive that path because they knew how impossible it was to break into. And now it is possible. So that has changed, and I like it very much. But I also have to say that venture capital has changed itself, because to me it's quite a living, I don't want to say animal, it's not an animal, a living structure that constantly changes itself. And that is why the US venture capital has been around for such a long time, because it changes with the community, it changes with the investment requirements, and the relationship between investors and the founders of the company became much more civilized, I would say, because there was that phenomenon that actually, no, the way it started, okay, I'm jumping into another question you haven't asked, but so ask me this question. Ask me this question, what has changed in venture capital in the US?
Yeah, well, that's basically what I wanted to shift. Like, I this topic, I'm sure we close, and just full disclosure, by the way, I did invite several female VCs, and ironically, like, it didn't work out somehow. Like, all the, like 90% of my connections are male VCs, and they were very responsive. Like, even the 10% of the 3 female GPs I have invited, only one of them replied, and it's going to be probably within 2 months we're going to record the interview. So maybe they're just busier, like, I don't know. So, but that's also my statistic.
They still need to establish themselves, but it's okay.
Yeah. So, but coming back,
I remember at the time, again, if we go back to the female thing, now that I think of it, during when the FJ still had that international network, and there were 17 funds in that network, in China, Korea, Vietnam, Brazil, UK, like all over the world, and with partners in all those worlds. And all in all, there were about 150 partners, and I was the only female partner in that network, international network. And yeah, they were women, but they were associates or secretaries or whatever. And now it is changing, but not that much. Now, when I think about level of the senior partners, no, that still has not changed that much. But again, it's because when it's one thing just, to go and say, yes, I'm starting a fund, or I have a fund, and we know whatever, and we're all cool. And another thing, if you need to work on that level next to the senior partners of big funds, well, they didn't start yesterday. And you cannot become a senior partner of a top fund only because that top fund has been around forever. And they do have requirements to, when they invite somebody on the later stage to join as a senior partner. Let me tell you, to get into that, it doesn't matter, your gender or your whatever it is. You really need to have had that experience of decades investing on that really high level. And that is tough for anyone. So, I at that point, what I'm saying, like, if a young woman decides she wants to be top partner, I don't want to name any names here because we did have the disclosure, we're not naming names, but you cannot just show up at the top fund that has been around for 60 years and just say, oh yeah, they didn't make me senior partner because I'm a woman. No, because if you want to be a player on that level, start your own fund and get there and be a founder of your fund. And you create deals like SpaceX and something else, and then you'll be a top senior partner. Yeah. So anyways, but what I was going to say. Oh.
No, go ahead. Yeah, we were going to your journey as a VC, and how I'm interested to see I would say the evolution, right? If you were like advise someone who's just starting their career, imagine someone has like a small VC fund, 5, 10 million, 20 million, doesn't matter. But it's still like relatively small if we compare something like the Sequoia type of funds. So what would be your top advices? Like, looking back in your career, which is rich, and I'm sure you had different experiences going to Russia, Latin America, you name it. So I'm just curious, what would you advise to people, like, to build on the skills or some particular, like, tips?
Well, the same advice I'm giving myself, because it doesn't matter how many years you spend doing something, and once in a while, I think it's important to reinvent yourself. And like if you look at my resume, for example, it looks like I planned everything from the ripe age of 4. Because when I was 4 years old, I loved learning languages and English. I just loved it. I loved it to the point where I had a choice of watching cartoons or a show teaching you English. I would pick a show teaching me English, and I was 4 years old. But if, like for example, my previous fund was about emerging markets. And I was really passionate about going to all those exotic places and looking for entrepreneurs who could build something that will change the industry to the better and all that. But I wanted to do it outside Silicon Valley because one thing I did not like crowds. You know, when I came to this country, actually there were no people in Silicon Valley, Russian speaking in my field, no. They showed up several years later. And then when that movement became bigger, and also venture funds, the investment thesis was that you don't invest anywhere outside the place where you could bike to your meeting. So that's what it was. And all the funds were like that. And as that, I didn't want to be a part of the crowd. That's why I joined Team Draper, who had that vision that you can have venture capital outside Silicon Valley. Yes, you have the Silicon Valley expertise, but you can look for founders and entrepreneurs outside that little geographical place. And it was really interesting for me. And that is why I had a lot of fun during those years looking for entrepreneurs, yes, in Russia, Eastern Europe, Brazil, Turkey, Singapore. Fascinating. And it was fun as long as it was fun. And then gradually, all the people, that sounds interesting, all the people who worked with the emerging markets, they ended up in Silicon Valley because their dream was to come here. And then all of a sudden, this place became extremely crowded because everybody wanted to show Silicon Valley to the rest of the world. Because they came here 2 years ago, 3 years ago, all become immediate experts, and so they're selling their expertise. Now, I don't like to be in a crowded place. So my new fund is about the new approach to investments where you still make money. Absolutely, you have to make money first, but you have to be responsible in your investments. It means that, even previous, when you write a PPM, and there would be always a clause about how you don't invest in tobacco, alcohol, whatever. It's more than that. It's when your investment has to, I will give you an example. Like even with all this plastic processing plants and factories, it's really not a secret that even with all the newest available technologies, that plastic still stays underground, whatever they deposited, for decades afterwards. It's a huge problem. Now, when a company comes up with a catalyst that actually can split it to the point when it's absolutely biodegradable, so that would be an example of a technology I'm interested in right now. Mm-hmm. So it will, yes, it will make money because it will become an industry standard, but in the end of the day, it solves a really, really big problem. So, and now I want to stay in Silicon Valley when everybody is now starting to look outside, because I like my own niches, and you go in there, and if you cannot be a founder of the biggest club in the world, start your own club. That's what I do.
No, that's really smart. So that we were talking about the heat capital, right? Just
the heat capital, yeah.
Sustainable.
So the question is, what advice you give to anybody who wants to start a fund? And I'm saying the same advice I gave myself, and only because I'm implementing what I already have done before. Because when I wanted at some point do a Russia fund, and nobody had the Russia fund in Silicon Valley. And we're talking 2004, 2005. I already had a small fund, but it was too small. So I needed to have a bigger fund to work in the field. And let me tell you, nobody really liked that idea. It wasn't that popular back then. And well, now it's not popular either, but for different reasons. And that's the advice I got. Go talk to as many investors as you possibly can, and then you'll find someone who believes in what you do, and they will write your first check. So and once you have to, yes.
No, so that's like a blue ocean strategy in the VC world, right? So your first, like your strategy has to be unique, right? So somewhere where others don't.
You have to be uniquely qualified to do what you do. You have to be the best in your class, and you have to be resilient and be prepared to get like hundreds of no's and no's and no's, and then eventually get one yes. When startups are pitching to me, for example, and they think that you're a VC, well, you're on top of the world, and you make them suffer one round, second round, asking all those questions when the answers are so obvious, and you keep asking them the same question. No, because we go through our own exercise. We are doing our own fundraising, and once you raise somebody else's money, the responsibility is enormous, because people give you money to invest, not because they do want to live in a better world, but they also have charities they support. And when they give money to you and you're saying, yes, I'll invest in deals that will make the world better, but the number one requirement is I must return the capital. Otherwise, people who invest in me will not understand. Well, anyways, that's why this process is never ending. And yes, that will be my advice. So take no, it's okay, but turn no into a yes, and take as many meetings as you have to. Believe in what you do, and have pitch to everyone, but have a very small circle of high-level professionals, people who are much smarter than you are, more experienced and more successful, and their opinion would matter. But that number of people doesn't have to be big. It actually will have to be small, because the rest of the world, you don't care about the rest of the world, because of their opinions. I mean, you're fundraising, but you believe in what you do, and have really high level, I don't like the word consultants, advisors. No, really don't like those words. I do call them mentors. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't matter how old you are and how experienced you are. Once you get into a new field, you always will find people who know more about that field. And they're the ones who will be helping. Like, for example, for my new fund, I take advice and I listen to people who are much younger than I am, because they've been in that field. When you go to the plastics, for example, stuff, I don't know anything about plastics, but I do know how to evaluate an expert. I know how to tell the difference between someone who just knows as much as I do but pretends to know more, and those who actually are deep into their field. And figuring out how to make that person want to share their wisdom with you, that's one of the skills you need to have when you're starting a new project.
So if I may ask you this, this is a very interesting topic, because we touch like the entire plethora of like different things, like how can you manage the fund. So one thing you mentioned, you have to be persistent. That's 100% in anything you do. That's super valuable, obviously. But then I want to touch base like on two very pragmatic points. One is, okay, so you're, again, a lot of my viewers, some of them they have like smaller funds, or they're like having syndicates and they're looking to build a fund. And it seems like everything is great. Okay, persistence. However, you need to know exactly where to go and to take money. So the typical path, as you know, like it's people go to high net worth individuals. If they know someone, friends and family, then they go to fund the funds. Then they potentially try to pitch some syndicates or some incubators, accelerators. So some of the gatherings, some of the groups which they know that they have a lot of accredited investors, right? And then nothing happens. Imagine even this efforts, like something is like it's like they come to despair, like they don't know, like, okay, well, I have only 1 million check from one person who's an anchor investor, maybe two other committed like a few hundred thousands. And this is the tipping point, which defines more resilient, founders or managing partners of a fund from people who are sometimes become desperate and they try to either close the fund or, discontinue it. So my question to you, in this particular case, like if, take it as a case study potential, what would you advise to do? Like, how would you advise to pivot so that you will not lose this, trust in your own forces?
Well, it's a good test for everyone to actually go through. If you will determine yourself how hard you are prepared to work for your vision. Like, when I wanted to have my fund in Russia, stuff I was doing, oh my God. I'm telling you, I've been through so many no's, including from people who I've known enough and they knew that I can accomplish things once I do. They believed in me, but they just didn't believe in this whole geography. And now I didn't want to quit because I wanted it so much. I had that vision, and I'm so happy I did it because I did have that vision that in that part of the world where I grew up, I always believed that I'm surrounded by geniuses. It just people there who come up with all kinds of fabulous technologies, unique, interesting, but they didn't know that word starting with M, marketing. They had no idea how to sell. They had no idea how to build anything. So I had that vision that if we combine those unique technologies with this business savvy of the US business mechanism, we will create all those fabulous companies. Well, we can talk about it later, what actually happened. But the point is that nobody could stop me. I wouldn't just even get upset. But then to give you another example, after, for whatever obvious reasons, we had to liquidate everything we had in the emerging markets like in Eastern Europe, and it was more political than anything else. For a couple of years, I had other ideas what I would do next. And let me tell you, I would go and I will get those no's and they just won't work. And at some point, I had to have a conversation with myself. Am I going to fight for it, or is it the time I do something else? And because I always also had that platform, my symposium, which is a terrific way to test various ideas, that's when, and I had access to various experts, obviously, and that's when I decided that I do not want to pursue that particular project because it's not leading anywhere. And I would always compare, do I have that fire I had when I was doing my Russian project? And it didn't. So to me, that was a sign that if I am getting tired of getting all those no's and nothing is happening, I do not want to continue. So sometimes, like they teach you in business school, and I mean, I don't know our audience for educated. It's such a notion as sunk cost, right? And a sunk cost is something like, for those who maybe forgot, that you work so hard, you put so much resources into the project, and it's not working out, and you cannot drop it because you put so much effort into it already, and be it financial or emotional or whatever. But there is a time when you need to call it and say, okay, this is it. It's not working out. This is sunk cost. I'm not going to worry anymore about stuff I put in. I will just go and do something else. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's much better than spend years on something that you are not excited about it anymore, but because you started it, you must drag it to the end. No, you don't. It's okay. It's okay once in a while to say, let's do something else. And that's how we moved to that seed capital fund. And I'm as excited now as I was when I was starting that other fund. So yeah, that is my other advice to people working in that industry, trying to either raise a fund or maybe do a business. If at some point it becomes like it's a dead end, learn how to listen to yourself so that you know the difference. When you have to be resilient, and you have to be resilient. And when you have to say, okay, it didn't work out, move on, do something else. And I'm a firm believer in that approach. I apply to relationships, for example, too. As my grandma used to say, you don't need to eat the whole apple to the end if you know it's rotten, right? Okay, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's also an exceptional point. I think I have so many things to ask you. Like, so I will start one by one, right? So you've touched another, I would say, topic that is quite dear and near to me. Obviously, I'm coming from Eastern Europe as well, so and we talked about it a little bit, like, you know, offline, that essentially, unfortunately, if we look at the statistics, you know, regardless of the fact that there are a lot of smart, like, people, like, you know, engineers, like founders, like visionaries, like from Eastern Europe, and but a lot of them, most of them, I would say, succeed if they completely move to Europe or United States. So we haven't seen a lot of unicorns that actually have all the grassroots, so meaning that the headquarters and all the operations, only that they're working in from the, you know, their offices, whether it's going to be in Kiev, Moscow, Minsk, or any other capital, like, or any other big megapolis. So this is one point, and obviously there are other criteria, other parameters, but I want you to, I want to ask you a more general question. So if you would picture a success formula for a promising startup from Eastern Europe, what would that be?
Well, I think we're talking about the high-tech phenomenon in general. It's not just Eastern Europe. I would say everything outside Silicon Valley is pretty much in the same boat. If you choose to build a world-level company, you need to be closer to the market. Okay? If you are creating the luxury brand, for example, and you've created those fabulous, I don't know, some accessories or shoes, or it's passion driven, then yeah, I would recommend you go to Paris, Rome, and be there, because that's where the market will embrace your product the best. New York, maybe not really. It has to be in Europe. If you create,
that's debatable to me, but I agree with you.
I don't know, but I'm still, you know, I love New York, but when it comes to fashion, I'm still, you know, Paris does it. So, but in high tech, whether we like it or not, US has the biggest market. Now, we won't talk about China now, because China is a totally different phenomenon, and we can discuss it separately. But the high-tech market is the biggest here. You know, Elon Musk wasn't exactly born in the US, right? But he moved here. The founder of Facebook was in Boston, and also at some point he realized he needs to move to Silicon Valley. Not because it's this paradise, or you'll just show up and you pick up, you know, golden fruit from trees, or especially now with stuff going on. But it does, what Silicon Valley does, it helps you build a global business. So coming back to your question, if you created, even if it's in a high-tech world, something which just improves other technology a little bit. So you wrote an app, or you created something which is high-tech, but it's making money in your region, and it's okay, and it's fine, and stay there. But if you think that you've created a technology which has a potential of becoming either the next global network, or it will be the next Cisco, or it will be the next Microsoft, next Google, whatever, then of course you need to be closer to action, and that's it. I won't recommend moving to Silicon Valley if you know how to have a better, I don't know, harvest of tomatoes. And I'm not, you know, I'm not mocking people who do that, because it's a terrific business, and yes, you will make money doing it. But in high tech, yes, and only because this market is bigger. Now, if it changes, and all of a sudden the high tech market will be bigger, I don't know, in London, I'll say, well, then go there. But it isn't. So if you go to London, where people say that, oh yeah, there are plenty of startups there. Yeah, no, not really. Not really. Because London is famous for being a financial center of the world. Well, with Brexit and whatever, it's a different story. We'll see what will happen, but they still are. And yes, I would say if you are a banker, absolutely, have an experience in office there. But for high tech, the US is still only because it's the biggest market. And then we can discuss what is it in Silicon Valley that companies do that it's impossible to do any other place. Even high taxes and this horrible weather now. Can you believe it? I'm saying California has a horrible weather.
Yeah.
Well, it does have an awful weather.
No, so I know, like in San Francisco, by the way, like I feel bad for you guys because I know you have clouds, the red clouds, like which is not a pleasant experience, due to the fires emerging like everywhere in California. So I'm praying for that to resolve faster, because I know it's hard to breathe, it's hard to navigate or do anything like that. So, but coming back to our topic, so. One of the practical things that you've mentioned, so one is like if we would like go down to earth, advices is like your headquarters ideally should be somewhere closer to your investors. It asks in your case, like if you're offering let's say your money to startups, so they probably logically should consider moving somewhere close to Menlo Park or whatever, anywhere close to San Francisco, right? So so this is one case scenario. Maybe some other things that actually prevent they're preventing people to also think outside of the box and think globally. You've seen hundreds of different startups in your career. I don't know, maybe thousands. You should tell me. Yeah, definitely thousands. So maybe some other top 3 things that you would offer to consider while building a global product.
Well, with this virus and our lockdown, as both you and I are still sheltering in place, so it's been about 6 months now, and the rest of the world is opening up gradually, including parts of Russia and Eastern Europe. But what the virus is, this lockdown is teaching us that there are other ways to play in this global market other than have a physical office in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the 2 good things that this virus happened to me. One is that I get to spend time with my family because I always travel. And the second is that it shows that you can create a global business now, not being in Silicon Valley. This remote work and all, but then you just need to have such a solid partnership that you have experts on different locations, and somebody still needs to be present here just to cover whatever. But say your technology has a potential of being global. Say you created something which could be, I wouldn't say the next Spotify, but something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a terrific time to do it without being physically in Silicon Valley. And let me tell you, the investors now are writing checks to companies they've met on Zoom, which, the first 2 months when this whole disaster happened, there was this uncertainty among investors, like how to do these things, how to evaluate a company, how to do my diligence, oh my God, this is awful, this is horrible. So the first 2 months, people pretty much were sitting, trying to figure out how to continue to keep their dry power, and they mostly were dealing with the existing portfolio companies and not spend a nickel on new companies because you just don't know. Now that it's obvious that nothing is going to change for a long time, and I'm not being a pessimist here, I'm just being, I think, a realist, that, well, at least in California, we will not have all those gatherings and office visits for a long, long time. And what happened as a result, investors started to put money into companies that they have not met before. And it means, what does it mean? It means you don't need to be in Silicon Valley. It means you can be anywhere in the world. But having said that, your business structure has to be transparent. It has to make sense. And but now pretty much anyone can register a company in Delaware, not a big deal. So here, okay, so we established that you don't need to be physical in the valley as of, I don't know, 2 months ago. But then you still need to have the same business principles. And that is something I would encourage people from other geographies to really reevaluate. How you, a company, are performing your own due diligence. Because one of the things I see happening time and time again, when the founders coming outside Silicon Valley just do not know what's happening in that industry in the world. And yes, you think you created whatever you created, and you are certain that nobody else has it, but no. If the idea is wonderful and great, and that technology is actually solving big problems, it means chances are that someone else in the world not just thought of it, but actually implemented it. So I'm saying that go do your own due diligence, because when we ask you, like, what's your competitors, and the answer is, oh, we have no competition, it means that you're not solving a big problem, so not a good idea. Or you're clueless about your competitors. So that is one thing you need to do. One. Second, do not tell the investor that the market is like, I don't know, several $1 billion. Irrelevant. What is relevant is what portion of that market will be yours, why it will be yours, and how you're going to grab it. That's something you need to answer. And don't waste money on this market research about how many cars exist in the world. Nobody cares. But if you look at the companies that are going through IPOs, they filed now, including this used car company. Did they come up with anything new? Not really. But they streamlined their operations in a way that it started solving so many problems for so many people and businesses. That, yeah. So that would be an example of a big business idea. It's rare that somebody has a technology which will change the world just because it's the technology, you know? It will have to be something on the level of the, web or internet, right? So that will have to be a level of disruption. Just think big categories. I don't know if people still remember we were writing letters, right? But so that will have to be the shift from the letter to email. And now email is also obsolete. I don't know. I rarely use email. Now there are other ways to communicate with people with all those messengers and those apps and everything else, right? So that will have to be a shift. So that will be a technology shift. Everything else is pretty much about changing a business model. You know, look at Uber. What's new there? You and I, grew up in a country where all those gypsy cars, you flag it, it stops, it takes you somewhere. So if you look at Uber, all they did, they just made a nice technology connecting it all and made it easy to use, right? So, anyways.
No, that's an interesting analogy. I love it. So if I would to specify, like, how you mentioned, like, a very good point, which I wanted to ask this question, but you answered it before, even, like, in terms of the COVID era, right, during pandemics, like the physical location is becoming irrelevant in your due diligence process, like, but what matters is still, like, the team, the entire division, the idea, how will you implement it, the target addressable market, but still, like, in regards of what portion of the market will you grab, etc. Right? So, but my question to you is, and I want to, if I may ask you, like, really, like, maybe one practical case study of the latest project you personally due diligence, and you consider them, like, I would say, viable, for investment. So, how would you due diligence a team, especially right now? What's a new trend that it's also decentralized? One founder can be in one country, in one city, another can be in another part of the world, which is, on one hand, is great, but it also creates certain additional complexity. So what is your due diligence process in the COVID era?
Well, I'll give you a concrete example of that plastic case. We didn't get into that deal, not because we didn't want to, but and we can talk about, like, why we lost that deal. But so that's how we were doing due diligence. Okay. The idea is terrific, right? One found they both were in Boston. We cannot fly to Boston. We cannot look at their facilities. We saw the pictures. But then what is it that you do? Then as an investor, you need to learn how to evaluate the deal if you cannot meet with them physically and check everything. So they say that they have won a couple of grants. Okay, when company is saying that they won grants, you go and check the entities that actually issue those grants, because there are grants which really make no sense and whatever. Their grant came from MIT. Now, for those who don't know, that MIT is the top tech school in the world, and they are very careful about what they endorse. For MIT to give somebody the Grand Prix for the technology, it means that brilliant people around the world have evaluated it, and they said that yes, this is real. Because I have no way of figuring out how this, plastic will biodegrade and this catalyst actually doesn't violate the laws of physics. But I do know how to check if that grant was real, and it was. Then the application, I wasn't sure if actually companies would be willing to do it, because if that were a charity again, yes, then you get a grant and it's okay. You go and you figure out your plastics, you do whatever. But we're in the business of selling stuff. And it meant that I needed to see and interview their end users. And I asked them who they will start with, and then they gave us an example. If you are a farmer, it turns out they had no idea. So you're growing grapes or some other stuff. At some point, you cover it with also plastic film to protect. I had no idea that the farmers use so much of that film. And then when it's time to harvest, they roll up that film, and they really don't know what to do with those huge big things of that rolled up film. And so the company told us that the farmers were willing to use their catalyst, and they actually will pay them to do it because it would be easier for them to dispose of that film. Now, and that is the reason we lost the deal, actually, because we took some extra time because we wanted to interview the farmers. Now, how do you interview farmers when you're not allowed to meet with them? So it took much longer. But that will be an example, and the answer yes was yes, and they will be using that technology, and yes, they will pay company money to use it. And so the round they were raising was actually to do with factory.
So how long did it take if you would measure it in like 1 month, 2 months?
See, when companies come to you, and that's another question, when companies ask, how long does it take you to make an investment decision? What makes Silicon Valley different from the rest of the world? I mean, when it comes to investments, that when we say that need be, you can write a check the following day. And that is true. The Silicon Valley Venture Fund has that ability, and that's what makes it so competitive. Does it mean that we write checks the next day? No. But once in a while it happens. And to me, the companies, when they say that, oh, we're closing the round, and you just have like, I don't know, 1 day to get in, we're subscribing, oh, goodbye, because if you're in a rush, we need to still perform our due diligence. So in this particular case, because we were getting like in the last minute deal, because it qualified for our requirements, and we were prepared to write the check not within 1 day, but within 1 week. But they were so oversubscribed that they told us, okay, you do it in 3 days. And we didn't feel comfortable doing it because they needed that interview with the farmers. So anyways, to answer your question, normal time, well, there's nothing normal, but a fund would know within a month if they're going to invest or not.
Would know or would invest? Because there's two different...
Would invest.
Would invest, okay.
Would invest. If it's a good deal, yeah, you pretty much know after 2 meetings that you are interested, and after 4 meetings, you will do your due diligence. But does it happen like that all the time? No, I think typically it's 3 months, because it's well, now it becomes a longer process. Is it possible to write a check within a week? Yes, as I said, things like that happen, but rare. They are rare, and different funds have different strategies. If you look at this recent absolutely oversubscribed deal, what is it? I forgot their name. Something House. Oh my God, I've lost it. It's a new social network powered by voice. They have the, you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. Clubhouse, right? Right. Yeah. So that deal wasn't even announced, but people in the Valley, of course, knew it was in the works, and several venture funds were fighting for the deal with $100 million valuation when there was nothing there. Nothing. They that like almost closed better with 1,000 users. That's it, 2 founders, and Andreessen wrote them a check for $10 million immediately. Okay, all right. That would be one example. Is that the deal I would want to be part of? No, but there are funds who would be interested in doing it. In that sense, I'm more of a traditional early stage investor when I do need to understand pretty much how everything works. And because it's that way, you cannot be an expert in everything, but in my big network, I always have experts I can go to and still do that due diligence. Okay, so it's a long answer to the question, can you evaluate a deal that came outside Silicon Valley and still invest in it? Yes, you can, during the virus, and that's what made it different.
I get it. So again, the two, as a summary, so the average due diligence process it takes about a month, but in reality, like sometimes it may be like 2 weeks, sometimes it may be 2 months, or any other, for any other unpredictable reasons, it may vary, right? So that's as a summary. But that's quite fascinating. Again, I know that a lot of funds are doing background check on each founder, they try to do the finance, but it becomes. I'm curious to hear about some of your experiences, maybe some of your stories from the times where you actively invested in outside of US, because that becomes more complicated. Here you can order a background check for someone who doesn't know. You pay few $100 and you have everything, all the information, as long as you know the correct legal first name and last name. Yeah. In other parts of the world, unless you're friends with KGB, it's harder, right? So how would you see that? Because there is some story. There's a lot of stories of this caliber, where people, they either fake their identity or they try to cover some of the, I would say, not some gray area in their reputation. And they're not very public, so to speak. Yeah. So I'm curious, what innovative strategies would you apply to actually go and try to get all
You learn from your mistakes. When I started my first fund, this is in 2003, before that I was a CEO of a telecom company, and for people who might remember, there was this telecom crisis, which hit everything before even the bubble, the dot-com bubble, because the telecom, giants were disappearing one after another, and our company was providing services to tenants in offices in San Francisco, which is pretty much similar to the current crisis. So when I go okay, I've survived one crisis, we'll figure it out. And nobody was investing in startups. Nobody even believed in venture capital after the dot-com stuff. And that was one of the reasons when I made that trip to Russia after a long period of not going, because I didn't want to do anything Russian in the beginning. I didn't want to be profiled like Sasha is a Russia expert. No, I wanted to get established as a business person in Silicon Valley in my own right, which I did. But then I did see several technologies in Russia, which I really liked. But my plan was just to get one and bring it over to Silicon Valley and build it into a company, because I like being a CEO, working with American engineers. But for some reason back then, the Russian entrepreneurs, they learned that word combination, venture capital somewhere, and they won't talk to you if you are not. And That's what it was. I just wanted to find one deal and do it into a company. But that's how my first fund started. I called a couple of my friends back here and I said, guys, what about I bring more than one technology? Say I'll bring several, but for that we need a fund. And because by then I was selling my company, I made some money. And I put my own, and I'm glad that it was my own money, and just these two people, and they still talk to me, because let me tell you, we lost all that money. And I'm glad the fund was small, because we would have lost as much money as we had, and I'll tell you how. Because how do you do due diligence in a country where people do not know anything about due diligence or being transparent? And we're talking 2003. So I'll give an example on one particular technology. It was fabulous. It was green lasers. As efficient as an industrial laser, but small energy consumption, wonderful, having all those characteristics. And I'm talking to you guys, well, I'm not a physicist, but I just remember the technology on that level, it's either space or military. How do you have it? And of course, he said that in the Soviet Union fell apart, and it's his technology, and she kept the lab. All right, how did you keep the lab? Because there was no money. Nobody was putting money anywhere at that time. And of course, she said she got the grants from universities. And because there was this naive first-time investor, I actually believed it. Instead of trying to find that university or this university, like stuff I know how to do now, but back then. So the moment we gave him the funds, immediately several other people showed up. And of course, one was in Israel, one was someplace other else, and they all claimed it's their technology. And then also what happened, he signed over all the IP to several entities.
Wow.
One English, one French, and one American. I go, what do you do? Nothing. And of course, he spent a lot of money. Anyways, that was the best lesson in the world, because if you're taught like that, then I have to say that after that, oh my God, I probably will take a year doing due diligence, and that was, like, kind of so on the direction. And by the time we're done, the deal will be gone. And that's when I decided that it's probably better for me if I partner with someone who is from the top venture fund, and I will just persuade them to do it with me, because I realized that I just don't know anything about how.
You mean local? If you partner with someone who's local to the country where you invested in, right?
Right, and then when I discovered there are no investors in Russia in high tech, we're talking 2003, 2004, and 2005, no one. All right, okay. Well, then because I do live in Silicon Valley, and I am a player in Silicon Valley, and people respect me. And when I say people, I mean some good name people, local American people. And that's when I said, okay, if I couldn't find anybody in Russia, that was another thing. When I was persuading people to put money into my fund, and in full disclosure, you have to say that, yes, we'll do these returns, one us here, one us there, but then in full disclosure, you can say you might lose your principal. And the guy looks and he goes, not if you're alive, you won't lose. Right. That was it. So then that's when I decided that I need to bring a top fund. And can you imagine what it was? I actually was going to all the top funds in Silicon Valley, persuading them to partner with me to the Russia funds. They didn't do that. They didn't show me what I just did, but the attitude was pretty much like that. And then someone just said, okay, well, the only person who probably could do it is Tim Draper. and then that's what it was.
Can I ask you, how did you convince Tim Draper to partner with you? Like, how did you pitch it to him? If you can repeat it, like, I know some of the things you probably cannot reveal, but I'm curious as much as you can.
Well, the funny part is that he was looking for me. He was looking for me because by then he was building that big network, and he already had all those funds in India, Korea, and Israel, and whatever. And he tried to do Russia funds several times. And for some reason, one reason or another, it never worked out. Well, now I know what the reasons are, but back then it wasn't clear to me. And then somebody told him, if anybody can do it, do you know Sasha Johnson? And of course he knew me. I was pretty known among top VC funds back then because, I was. And so he actually was the one who reached out and said, hey, Sasha, let's do a fund together. But by then, I already didn't want to do a fund in Russia because I was still sore that I lost the hard-earned money, not just mine, but too my friends. And but at the same time, I still had that desire to do it. I was concerned that we just won't be able to make any money. But he was confident that it will work out. And that's when I said, all right, I know what not to do because I kind of spent a couple of years doing that. But I said, you have to be prepared to do it with me. Not this franchise model where you just give a name and you that pretty much, because some of the people were saying that many funds in that network, that's what it was. They were teams working in those jurisdictions, and there will be just another partner in US just in name, but not really much help. And that was the deal. And he kept his word. And both he and Steve Georgeson, another big name, they became my real partners. They looked at the deals with me. They taught me how to evaluate the deals. They allowed me to sit in the meetings where they were working with real entrepreneurs. That's when I met Elon Musk when he was coming to the DFJ's offices. I met all kinds of people there. So that was the best school I had, the best school. So I could not say that, I wasn't even allowed to express my opinion. And it wasn't binding, but that was terrific. And DFJ back then, those were golden years of DFJ. Terrific fun, terrific people. It's not, by the way, anymore. It's called it's a different name now, different people. Tim has his own fund, Steve Georgeson has his own fund, and then raising my own fund. But anyways, those
was a great history,
they're just fun days.
Great experience. So, I have to also ask you this tricky question, about, because, I personally met Tim Draper also in LA several times and then one time in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So, and you certainly know that he has a passion to crypto, right? And he was one of those early adopters and one of those people who is a visionary and who was...
Someone was the biggest Bitcoin investor in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Well, official one, yes. Official, yes. And
official will go and buy this auction. Yeah, so what is it?
So the question is, I'm sure, you're close to him, so I'm 100% sure that he pitched it to you at some point. And my question to you, did you invest? Or if you didn't invest, why?
Tim was just this kind of a very generous person. When he's excited about something, he's wide open, you're actually like, oh, guys, come do it with me. Just do it. And he came with a Bitcoin to everyone. And she had a ton of them to be able to sell. And I remember when she offered us to buy, it was like $500. And we're like, no, this is crazy. It's too much. No. And he goes, it will be 10,000. It will be 20,000. And we just rolled up. I said, we didn't do it. And of course, he's right. But when I don't know, I need to be passionate about stuff I invest into. That's why I didn't become like a stock market investor or some other format, because I never was driven. I like money, obviously, and I want to make money, and I like life. But I have never been driven by, I must make money, and this is the best way to make money. No, I always will go with that I want to do. And I am of this attitude that if you do it right, money will follow, because it just cannot be any other way. In that sense, I wasn't excited about Bitcoin. I absolutely was not excited about those ICOs. To me, it was just speculation on something that really has no value. I could never understand how you can promise something before you have it, and then you whatever. So I missed that whole thing. I'm not saying that it wasn't a good thing to do. Maybe for somebody who is more of a speculator, it's fine. It's just not my thing. And Tim is so versatile that he can do anything he wants. He can invest in early stage terrific deals, or he can believe in those virtual currencies. And there was one project where, not that recent actually, we spent a couple of years with them evaluating that deal, and we almost invested in it. And that was another, it wasn't more than just virtual currency. It had all kinds of good stuff under it, including this universal basic income.
They're more applied like a blockchain as a technology, right?
Right. Really, really, really interesting. And that is something I got excited about, because to me, yes, it was virtual currency, but the project is also deep and so interesting and so robust. But we did spend a couple of years trying to work with that company, and for several reasons it didn't work out. But that would be as close as I got to those non-fiat currency. And if, another project like this comes along, when it will be more about building something than just speculation on, I never believed in arbitrage. I mean, I'm not saying that you cannot make money there. Yes, you can, and many people do. Just not my thing.
Yeah, no, I realize that. I mean, for some people, I would say, as a person who's passionate about it, like for me, it was also not about money. I mean, I was excited when I first made doubled my investment in Bitcoin, and I saw wow, this is from $100, or I remember I bought it was $100 or $200 somewhere in 2013, 12, and then it doubled. Well, yeah, of course I was excited, but at the same time, I was more driven by I would say, philosophical concept of it, of distributed technology, of I would say the freedom of and the opportunity of transaction, of no barriers as bankers, who are just, they can freeze your account at any given point, right? And they will not ask you for permission. They will say, well, red flag. And we, by the way, if in terms and conditions, they always write that we have the opportunity not to disclose you even the reasons why. So they can just close an account, anyone, Chase, Bank of America, any major bank in the United States, which I'm sure all over the world it's the same situation. They can freeze your funds, they can close your account, and we're almost like hostages. We work hard. We, I know a lot of people, I'm sure you do, a lot of people who are listening to us, the people work hard and that's their money, but eventually, even if we talk about fiat currencies, in reality they are, but in practicality, just zeros and ones on your screen of your laptop or your cell phone. So that's fascinated me. The entire concept of more digital nomads and people who are trying, not necessarily anarchists, but people who are trying to decentralize processes and trying to remove the intermediaries.
It was very similar to what is happening now with these SPAC instruments.
Yeah.
I mean, SPAC with special purpose acquisition corporation, they've been around forever, famous back in the 80s even. But now all of a sudden they became also popular, and it does look quite similar to what ICOs were. But is that something that might work? Yeah, it might work. It might work, yes, because when you make an investment and you stay through all the stages, then ideally you leave to this wonderful day of an exit. Okay? And it either will be an M&A or it will be an IPO. And many entities and companies and people are trying to get into the pre-IPO deal. And it's seriously quite impossible, because by the time the company does an IPO and the investment banker is doing underwriting, then they're the ones controlling the allocation. And yes, if you are their client and you know somebody, whatever, you can still get in, but it's pretty much controlled for a very narrow group of people who can do it. What SPAC does, for those who don't know, they buy a ticker on the existing stock market, and they're already a public company, but it's a blank check company. They're empty. And then they're looking for an acquisition target, and once they acquire a company, then that company becomes public, and that's how investors make money. It's just a simple way to describe it. And there are a couple of companies, decent companies, who are willing to do it via that instrument, but there would be more companies that would stay empty and they'll buy something garbage in it and just and it's it's true.
No, 100%. It's we're talking about the same. I think in the same realm because right now the companies who actually survived it, it's not an ICO company. There's only few who went through successful legal and compliant ICOs. All other they either died out, or they're transformed into something more venture capital style, right? And a lot of them are having Series A round, Series B round from major Silicon Valley investors. So, I'm not talking about ICO, right? This is again, it's a crowdfunding experiment, right? It was fun to see how, from the behavioral psychology, how people are still trying to play, on how gullible we are. A lot of the, I would say, biases and a lot of our inabilities to apply critical thinking, they just played out beautifully in a massive scale. Well, again, we've seen it thousands of years ago, in the same pattern, right? Like in Roman Empire and Babylon, where some coins were denominated. So that's totally fine. What's fascinating, the technology is there, and it's, to your analogy with email or internet, I think with decentralized technology, to me personally, it's almost like, if you build this MTP and TCP/IP protocol, right now we're building the next Rails. And I'm talking about purely technological aspects, not the speculative aspect of it. So it does exist. I know a lot of great examples, and it's probably a separate conversation for an hour. But but I want to also, I know that we can, I don't want to, go into this particular conversation. I want to end up the interview in an interesting philosophical Russian way, I would say. So as a human being, you're an intellectual, you're a person who's successful in not only in business but also in your life. And I'm curious to know what drives you. What is your what is the meaning of life to you? What is your purpose? It's a small question, short one,
I think I was born that way. I was born that way. It's again about who shapes you in your world. I'm thankful to my parents, and not just parents, my grandparents too. My both grandmothers. I never met my grandfathers, but they taught me that I can do anything I want in this world as long as I apply myself, and I just knew that. And I was a good student. I was always a straight A student. And when I'm just looking back, I just always was following my dream and my goal. I always had a goal. I cannot explain it, but just wake up one day and you want to do something. And sometimes it's so different from what surrounds you, but you want to. I don't know why I wanted to speak English when I was 4. Was I planning to come to America? Absolutely not. No, I just liked the way it sounded. And then I did go through all kinds of stages in life, including there was a period I was writing poems, and I was very serious about it, and we were doing performances with my girlfriend, and I was composing music, and she was singing, and it was fun too. And then at some point, because I was, I grew up in Soviet Union, and when it was, late 80s, when it was clear to the rest of the world that the country probably will not survive, but we're living there, didn't know that. All I knew that whatever I tried to do is not working out because it's just kind of, earth is shifting underground. So I wanted to have my own business. And I remember I came with that idea. Back then, there was quite officials who needed to prove everything, to put a stamp on a desire. And I'm telling me, guys, do you have a business degree? What business degree? I already have a master's, and by then I already had a PhD in philology. You need to go to school. I need to go to school. That's all I did my whole life. I was going from one school to another. No, but you cannot study business if you don't have a business degree. All we're talking in the 80s, there were no business schools in Soviet Union. I'm going, okay, business school, okay, fine, let's look, where do we have business schools? You do a little research and you know that the best schools, at least somehow, I heard the word Berkeley. And that's when I said, okay, I'll go to Berkeley. And people look at me, how will you get there? I do not know, but I'll figure it out. So I wanted to go to business school. And that's how I got my first American visa. It was a tourist visa, but it had in practice prospective student. And yes, I showed up with $300 in California because I wanted to go to Berkeley. That's it. So, and then, That's
But my question, I will specify my question. So that's your story, and which I really appreciate your sharing. And I know that like if you would share more, like there is a lot of like moments. I'm convinced that you've showed resilience in life and it paid back. But my question is a bit deeper than that. Like, and I'm asking about what drives you. What's your meaning in life? Like beyond just like work, beyond just like maybe your family, like something that is more, I would say, closer to a transcendental experience.
Oh, I get excited by talking to people who are smarter than I am. That's why I think I am in this business, and that's why I think I am in Silicon Valley. Because what I found for myself, it's really important for me to once in a while do something that I do not understand, and that's how you learn. And I think this sheltering down is hard for me really because when I say meet interesting people, I meant around the world. And if you ask me what would I do in my spare time, I never had any spare time because I like to travel on business. And when I travel on business, I always want to go 2-3 days to explore theaters and art galleries and all that. And that I miss tremendously. Because now if I figure out a way how to do the Zoom due diligence, I still don't understand how I can replace that part where you are a citizen of the world, where that France has this, which is the best, Russia has this is the best, or America has the Silicon Valley, which is the best. But to me, it had to be all together. I cannot be in one place forever. That part is hard.
Well, now you have virtual reality experiences. I know it's not the same, but I'm sure they will. Listen, your friend Elon Musk is not working on like Neuralink. They will implement a chip in your head, and you will close your eyes, and you will imagine that you are somewhere in Bermuda or I don't know, anywhere like Fiji. Like, so, that's an opportunity.
I know, and it's no joke. I definitely am interested in it, and I will use it. But it's still not the same. I love being in harmony. Like my physical environment has to be in harmony with my mental state, and that's what makes me happy.
Got it.
But now, now I think we figured out a way to connect, and I enjoyed our conversation, and I feel that we are connected, even though we were sitting on that screen, and it was almost a real conversation. So I think eventually, with this enhanced virtual reality elements and everything else, we will figure out how to still make this world connected, because it's very, very important. Because one thing again about Silicon Valley, things about what or how. What is the technology that can originate anywhere in the world? How you bring it to the world, give it to people. And that's what the Valley still does the best, and I think I'm in the right place. But when it comes to my other spiritual desires, let me tell you, it won't be Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley for me is, yes, it's best for high tech. But if I want to go and feed my soul, it will be outside Silicon Valley. And that is fun.
Got it. So one last question. The book that changed your life, or maybe something that like really inspired you, that the one book that you would recommend people, it can be in the VC space, or it may be just like something like, poem novel that you enjoyed, so one book.
One book, oh my God.
You would recommend
it. Because then it will diminish other books. I don't know. Something about Silicon Valley, people just write about it. Silicon Valley age, probably.
No, it might be a book that just changed your life. It might not be necessarily about like the adventure.
No, nothing has changed my life. My life changes. I read books on the stages of life, which no, I don't. I cannot think of a book that changed my life. If I think about changing my life, I'm inspired by people. And because we all read a lot in Soviet Union, and that is, I think I read all kinds of books when I was still a child, a teenager, and then the university. So there were so many books. I don't know. I still like Alice in Wonderland. What can I say?
It's a very deep book, by the way. I don't take it as a fairy tale. Like, it's a very, very deep philosophical.
No, it is not. This book is written for adults. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, fine. If you want one book, latitude. Alice in Wonderland.
Accepted. Accepted. No, it's a great book, you know. And I mean, thank you so much, Sasha. I really enjoyed our interview. Like, you know, I think we could have talked, like, you know, few more hours more, but you know, we also
I might continue, let's see, because you and I had fun. Let's see if your audience actually enjoyed any of that. We'll be happy.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will, and really appreciate your time. And I wish a lot of success, you know, in all of your projects. Like, you know, I'm excited that, like, you know, my show is like holistic investment. So with your sustainable investment in emerging markets and emerging, like, you know, industries, like, I wish you all the best, and I'm sure you're going to be successful with your attitudes, no doubt about it. Right? So, and with all the other projects, right, in global technological symposiums and all the, like, the VC.House. We didn't have even time to talk about those projects, but I'm sure we're gonna find some other time to talk about them.
We'll find out.
All the best.
And you had a woman on the show, so it's all good.
No, this is a huge, and like I'm happy that you've broken the ice. You know, like, broke the ice for first female VC on the show. I'm really excited about it, and I'm sure there will be more, and that you will give a great example for any also female founders or managers who are trying to build up their funds, and I hope they will have a lot of inspiration.
I'll be happy to. So let's stay in touch, and to be continued. Goodbye for now.